Okay, good morning, everybody. Glad to be here. I've done this for several years and always happy to do this. It's very interesting to me. So I'm kind of the warm-up act for this morning. What I'm going to tell you about is not um, particular startup business or anything like that. It's to tell you about some capabilities that we have at our NASA facility, because I think it's good for people in the state to know about what's going on and what is available. Kinds of things are related to technology and space exploration and things like that, but also the capabilities are available that they may want to make use of at some point. So I'll get right into it. I've got a number of slides, but I'm going to go through them quickly. If I can get it to change. There we go. Okay. Got multiple screens going here. So just a quick background, the NASA White Sands Test Facility, which is organization under the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. It has been there since the early 60s. It was started for the Apollo program, and they thought it would only be there for 10 years or so, but many decades later, we're still there because we remain relevant to newer programs, NASA programs, and we do a lot of work for other agencies as well, and for commercial companies. It's about 28 square miles of the White Sands Missile Range, which sounds like quite a bit, but it's a tiny fraction of the missile range. We are not organizationally part of the missile range. We're just a tenant on the property. So our customers include Johnson Space Center, NASA headquarters, and other government agencies. We do a good bit of work for particularly things like rocket engine testing and component testing and things like that for other government agencies, as well as for commercial companies. Here's some more about the commercial companies. You see a lot of, this is not a complete list, but it's a partial list of some of the ones you may recognize. We've also done ever since the space station got started, we've done work for the International Space Station, including flight hardware that goes on the space station. In some cases, we refurbish and test components or subsystems that are going onto the space station, and we continue to do that today. Most of you, I'm sure, have heard about the new NASA Orion crew vehicle that will be launching soon for testing, and we've done a lot of different parts of that. This slide kind of gives you an idea of some of the different things. For instance, pretty much everything that goes inside a space capsule, a human-rated capsule, including the space station, including this Orion capsule. We do testing on various components that goes into it. We also do things like off-gassing tests and so forth to make sure that the materials and parts that are going into these human-rated vehicles don't have excessive off-gassing or have noxious fumes or things that might be unpleasant to the extent that can be mitigated. The Space Launch System, we're doing multiple projects for SLS. Again, that we have various testing capabilities there that the programs make use of. So this is the core capabilities for NASA White Sands Test Facility. It's some years ago, we realized we were doing a lot of different things, and when the space shuttle program came to an end, we realized we had to focus on certain things that we considered our core capabilities, and this is the core. We actually had 5 to begin with. We expanded it some, but this kind of gives you an idea of the things that we're going to focus on, and I'll talk more about each of these. First, I want to just mention, since this is an innovation discussion today, I want to talk about innovation at our facility. So, I feel like it's just part of what we do every day. It's what we have to do to do our job and to thrive in the modern environment. As I mentioned, we have been around for many decades beyond what NASA originally envisioned, because we are constantly innovating and finding ways to do new testing that customers need, and do the testing better and more efficiently. And so that's why I mentioned most of our innovation is focused on improving our testing capabilities, both in terms of doing new and different tests and doing the testing that we do better. And the innovation drivers for us, customer test requirements evolve and change. The new programs come with new testing requirements, and the new technologies drive new capabilities. For instance, there's new materials being invented all the time. There's new types of components, both mechanical and certainly electronic, coming out all the time. And every one of those, if it's going to go into spacecraft, has to be tested a lot of different ways before it goes into a spacecraft. So I'll start with the big thing that the NASA White Sands Test Facility was created for in the beginning, primarily, is rocket propulsion testing. So we test small to medium-sized engines. I would say we do not test things like the large booster rockets that take a spacecraft up, but we test the smaller rocket engines that are on the vehicles for positioning, and both on the flight up and in space. And so, for instance, we did testing for many years, refurbishing and testing the small thrusters that were on the shuttle, space shuttle, and lots of different other vehicles that have gone up. We tested recently the service module on the Boeing CST-100, the Starliner, and also the launch abort engine for the Orion, and a lot of other things. We do testing on these smaller engines for the Air Force and Navy and others as well. So here's an indication or example of one of the innovative kind of things that we're doing. So a few years ago, we got talking about that we had a test chamber, vacuum test chamber that we had used for testing for years, for testing small rocket engines. It wasn't going to be needed for a while. We're thinking about what to do with it. So several people came up with the idea of having a ability to do make a CubeSat test bed. So the idea is a very flat table, basically, or platform that's inside a large chamber that can be evacuated. And so you could put a CubeSat in there and do a lot of testing on the control system and other aspects in a near space-like environment. So another big part of what we've been doing for years, but have really taken a lead in recent years, is composite pressure vessels. A lot of you probably know that composite pressure vessels have largely taken over from the traditional steel tanks for all kinds of things, for pressurants, propellants, and other things. Certainly in space flight, it has to be these vessels, because they're so much lighter in weight than the steel tanks, and they've been used in aircraft industry, and now they're being used even in land vehicles. So we've developed a technology to do a lot of different kind of testing and to inspect these vessels when they're in service, to make sure that they're working correctly, and if they're not, know if they can be repaired and how to repair them. So here's some more about details about technologies being advanced in terms of the pressure, but the composite overwrap pressure vessels. And I kind of mentioned this already, but the CPVs are very lightweight, which is very important when you're doing space flight or aircrafts. But they have less structural margin than the traditional tanks, and so they take a lot more care and feeding and attention. This gives you an idea of one of the kind of tests we do. As with other kinds of components and systems, some of the tests we do are tests to failure, to see how much it takes to cause something to fail, and then figure out why it failed and what you can do to make it better. So this series of pictures shows a burst test. So here's some things that are on CPVs that are unique to WSTF, some things that we've developed and are able to do, just different kinds of materials. One of the main things is we do lots of testing at WSTF with hazardous materials, including hazardous fuels, other things that are hazardous. We can test them there safely because we have the facilities and the knowledge to do it. Measured inspection is one of the things on COPVs. We're developing robotic inspection systems and other ways to inspect the COPVs. Some cases we do like a farm of COPVs and test a number of them at one time to see over a long period of time to see how well they stand up over time and look for failures. Other kinds of non-destructive testing, as I mentioned, the robotics, vessel inspections, and others. Other current areas of innovation, we're extending the lives of safer emergency jetpacks, COPVs, doing air leak detection, advancement, and other inspection capabilities. So one of the things we do is we refurbish a variety of different kinds of things, components and systems that go into space, including actual rocket engines. We did that for many years for the shuttle thrusters, and some of those thrusters wound up being used as for prototype newer spacecraft, and we continue to do that in recent years. I want to mention the enabling capabilities. This is one of the things that is widely used by both NASA and other government agencies and commercial customers. We have a full-up calibration lab. We have precision cleaning for flight and critical systems. We have the ability to refurbish flight hardware, as I mentioned, including rocket engines and other flight components. We have a full-up spaceflight rated machine shop, welding, valve repair, and other capabilities. And this just gives you a quick rundown of some of the major test facilities we have, the rocket engine test stands. And the thing that's particularly unusual about what we have in the test stands is the rocket engine test stands, most of them are inside an enclosed vacuum chamber so that we can actually fire the engine under reduced atmospheric pressure conditions to simulate, for instance, a flight, the pressures that it would see on a flight from the ground up to space, to see how the rocket engines perform over that profile. And the other thing that we have is a variety of training courses, all these different things I've talked about and a lot more. We provide training courses, and that's one of the main things that we've been doing for commercial space companies in the last, certainly over the last 4 or 5 years in particular. We do training both at our facility and we go out to other government facilities. We've done that a lot for SpaceX and for Blue Origin and a number of other companies, as well as for NASA. And I'll just leave it on that and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. There's a lot of capability in your facilities at White Sands, and we're a little bit behind time. So I'm going to see if maybe there's one burning question from our sharks that you'd like to ask, and then probably move to the next presentation. Matthias.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the information provided. I have one short question. With all the innovation that is going on at WSTF, has that led to the spin-off of companies in the past?
So I could say yes. For instance, there's a company in Las Cruces that most of the people that run the company started at NASA WSTF, and they went off and started their own company. They do some of the same kinds of testing that we do, and they do for more for commercial companies and so forth. I think one of the main things that we've provided is the training and the a lot of people have worked for us and then gone to work for Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic or SpaceX. So I think one of our main products is knowledgeable people and training to help companies get going and to build up the new companies.
Right. And Joe, I can add to that. This is Walt at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. There are two particular companies, Axiom. They are the company that is building the commercial space station. The director of Axiom, or the CEO, is Mike Suffredini, who is the former director of the International Space Station. He retired and formed Axiom. And then the other big one is Intuitive Machines, who was just granted a contract for commercial lunar payload systems. And he was the former director of JSC and the director of engineering. So we've had quite a few folks from the shuttle program dive into the entrepreneur and innovation ecosystems, if you will, and then they turn around and, based on their corporate knowledge, spin out what we call commercial prime companies.
Matthias, also, the New Mexico Startup Factory has licensed some technology from Johnson Space Center for a cell phone signal booster. And so they are doing that type of entrepreneurial outreach to the community also.
Okay, thank you for all of you for answering this question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good discussion. Okay, well, thank you, Joe. I'd like to move to our next presenter about high quality aluminum